welcome back to the Gig Life Podcast. I'm your host, Stevie Taylor. My guest today is Tim Baltes. Tim is a drummer and producer from Wisconsin in the USA who now lives in France. You may know Tim from his kooky and wacky Instagram page, Timbo from Kino, but I got to know who Tim was through his drumless tracks on Bandcamp, a wonderful resource for all drummers. In this conversation, we talk about all that stuff and much, much more, so I hope you dig it. This is episode 154, Tim Baltes. Here we go. I think we're rolling. Tim Baltes, how are you, man?
I'm good, man. Thank you so much for having me, Stevie. It's so great to chat with you.
Yeah, you too, man. So I'm in Sydney. You're in. Now, how do you pronounce? You're in France, and you're in a place called. Is it called Nantes?
Nantes. Yeah. You put a little the back of the nose on it, like you're about to sneeze, and that's how you get there. Yeah,
Nantes. Yeah, cool. So you're from Kenosha, Wisconsin, in the US, and you recently moved out to France. So I guess, talk about how why you're there now, why you're in France, why you left the US. Actually, no, before we do that, I want to let people know how I came across Timbo. Right now, a lot of people would know Timbo is the crazy kooky drum video guy on Instagram. Well, for me, it was through your drumless tracks. So, a good friend of mine, who I know you've seen him use your music on his videos, Glenn Wilson, a friend of mine here in Sydney. He's used a lot of your music for his videos, and fairly recently, I bought a Roland VAD 706 drum kit here so I can play at home again, right? Haven't been able to do that for a long time. So I remember scrolling through his Instagram one day and seeing him playing along to some tracks, and I apologize for not reading through and finding out who the tracks were, but I contacted Glenn and I said, look, I've seen you playing along to some drumless tracks, so where can I get them from? And sure enough, he gave me a link, and I went to your Bandcamp, and I think the first one I got was what I've got it up here. The first one, it was 10. It was number 10.
10. That's
the first one. So you've got 11 of these, 11 volumes of these drumless tracks. So I've the first one I got was 10. I own. I'm not saying own. I have purchased 6 of them now. So I'm one of those people that see the value in that content, and I've bought them to support you. So how about we chat a little bit about the drumless tracks first, and then we'll start bouncing around. We'll go back to the US. We'll go to France. We'll hang around Sydney. Whatever.
We're everywhere, baby.
Yeah, man.
No, yeah. First of all, thank you so much for the support. That means everything. Glenn, man, what a powerhouse of a drummer, and definitely someone who I respect because he's straddling the line that I kind of do too, where I think he's a graphic designer by day, and then he does the drum stuff for fun too, and monster player, and has such a wonderful ear for the different tones that he gets out of his little recording studio too. Like, I love the sounds he gets. Truly appreciate that guy for using my drumless tracks too, and because he makes them shine. He certainly makes them shine.
Yeah, so thanks, Glenn, for introducing me to drumless tracks, which introduced me to Timbo from Kino, which here we are today.
Yeah, no, I was so excited to hop on the pod here too, because it's, I've been fortunate to connect with a lot of Australian folks and Kiwis too, and so I was really excited at the opportunity to talk to you, about some of that stuff too, because it's such an interesting part of the world musically. Glenn, again, great place to start. And there's so many other drummers from that area of the world that I love. Stan Bicknell from New Zealand, who recently had that Primus audition.
Did you see the video or you may not have seen it yet because you just got up, but Primus have released the whole audition video. So that's out today.
I've got it literally in a tab in this web browser ready to go later this morning. So I'm looking forward to seeing that. Yeah. Great drummer. And from Australia, one of my favorites is, do you know Stella Mazgawa at all? I might be butchering that last name, but
I definitely know who she is. I haven't met her. I don't know her personally.
But she's another one where it's like, and maybe this is kind of a theme around Australia, is the tones people get. Stella's one of these drummers who it's just like monster groove, but so intentional about the way that she creates drum tones. Warpaint, which is the band that she plays with, is great, but whether she's doing stuff with Courtney Barnett, she's done Kurt Vile records, and when I hear the tones she's getting on some of these records, it's just like it almost makes you emotional, drives these songs. So that's something I really, really respect about a lot of the folks out of that side of the world. And then, then you have the fun stuff too, like OMC from back in the day, that band that had that one hit wonder, How Bizarre, so you guys got it all over in the Kiwis and the Australian folks out there. So yeah, man, cool. I love it.
And I noticed there's been some sort of sponsored ads pop up that Stella has been, she's created some drum packs too, I think, with Butch Vig.
Yeah, Butch is that's an interesting connection though too. Butch is another guy where it's like, so when I grew up in Kenosha, Butch would have been about an hour and a half, 2 hours northwest of me in Madison, which was our state capital, and there he had Smart Studios. So it's like, this is a studio very well known for having done work with Nirvana and Smashing Pumpkins, and it's very Wisconsin. It's an itty bitty room. It was a hunk of junk, but man, Butch and the team over at Smart Studios just made every band that went through there sound massive. So yeah, I could talk recording all day. I'm sure. We would, however many guests or our folks are going to listen to this, we could at least have that or get about 20% of them. Left by the time we start talking about drums and recording drums, man.
Very cool. So I liked what you said there about very Wisconsin. So this is we've been chatting on WhatsApp before this and. Discussing what we're going to talk about. And, for me, it's just my curiosity, really. I'm not here to, pick holes in anything. I'm just curious about the world, really. I haven't been to the States. I have no idea. But, listening to some of the podcasts that you've been on and a couple of, I can't remember the name of the one I was listening to the other day, but you were talking to a guy was sort of similar in the same sort of area. And then, I'm thinking to myself, well, you guys are talking as if I'd be talking to Glenn or something. We're talking about Sydney and the scene in Sydney. So, it's going to be cool later on in this to kind of dig into what makes it Wisconsin. What part of the music makes it Wisconsin, and why is it that?
To me, there are so many things that make Wisconsin music Wisconsin, and I think there are similarities, particularly when we think about Australia. And I think it might be more of a generational thing as opposed to, a cultural phenomenon that just comes out of one country. So, I'm 35 right now, and a lot of the drummers my age who grew up Milwaukee, Kenosha, Chicago, we all grew up playing, not all of us, but a lot of us grew up playing hardcore, metalcore, edging into sort of deathcore, death metal sort of stuff. And as we get older, either our bodies don't want us playing that anymore, or we decide we want to mature and play something a little different. But Australia was the same way. I remember when I was 15, 16 years old, one of the big bands that a lot of us listened to in Wisconsin was an Australian group. It was called I Killed the Prom Queen. It was this big metalcore band.
Right.
And I think they did a split EP with another Australian band that got quite a bit more popular called Parkway Drive. And so I Killed the Prom Queen. Had a little bit more of an edge to it at the time, and incredible production style. Incorporating, still a lot of the screaming vocals, some singing, cool guitar tones, cool drum tones, and riffs and stuff. But it was, you could not only just, from the accent of the singer singing the thing, but truly some of the riffs, they didn't sound like the stuff coming out of America. There was an edge to it that I think was particularly Aussie. And I really appreciated that about that music. And it's why I still, that the album I'm thinking of, it's called Music for the Recently Deceased. That came out in 2006. We're almost 20 years out, and I'm still listening to that record. And, there's the same way that band has a very particular sound that if you really understand the genre, you can hear. Milwaukee did too. We, in that area, right before my time, getting into hardcore and metalcore and this sort of thing, we had a band there called Seven Angels, Seven Plagues. And what was so cool about this band is the drummer, his name's Jared Logan, was a guy who, to my understanding, didn't grow up playing a ton of metal and that sort of thing, but hopped in this band and took a whole new perspective to the music. And that, to me, was the thing that really separated this band from everyone else. And I was fortunate enough to take a few drum lessons with Jared. And it was so funny because I go in there and I'm playing the same types of music that he was playing when he was younger. And he's like, no, let's, I'm like, give me one or two tools that I can really take with me, as I'm playing this music. And he's like, all right, let's sit down and you're going to learn how to play a clave. And I'm like, this is this Latin beat. What am I going to do with this in a hardcore band, And, but it was forming limb independence, and then, instead of teaching me anything that was related to hardcore, he took the other element that he really showed me was getting a good understanding of sort of like throw catch, modified molar, throw and grip for your drumstick. And those are tools that have really driven my drumming, my musical career on forward. So not only is it that there's this sort of glue of the aesthetic of the music that comes from these different areas of the world, but the ingredients of the glue, if you will, you wouldn't guess that final adhesion is going to be caused by any of these things, whether it's Latin music or the tools of the trade that drummers have been teaching drummers for the last couple hundred years. You know what I mean? So I thought just kind of interesting how all that stuff shakes out.
Let's stay in Kenosha then. Let's go right back to the beginning. Were you born into a musical family?
So here's how that worked is, so my dad, he played some guitar, but it was more casual, and then he kind of set it down for the rest of his life. But my uncle, my dad's brother, he was like a weekend warrior in the 70s and 80s. He had a giant Ludwig concert tom double bass set, the whole thing. And when I turned 2 or 3, and I'm pretty sure it was 2, he bought me my first drum set. And I'm sure, to some extent it was because, I was my dad's first son. But the other thing is he wanted to totally tick off my dad by having me just slamming on drums all the time at our house. So that is what I did, is I was immediately a hard hitter, and I broke every single head on that drum set. So that's kind of the extent of the musicality of the family. There's not a ton, my dad worked in IT and pharmaceuticals, my mom, nursing educator, my brother's a pharmacist, my sister's a doctor, and I play drums. I think it's not to say that there's no creativity in those other things. I certainly think there are, but it's I don't know. Maybe it's harnessed in a little bit or a lot of a bit a different way, as a musician rather than as some of these medical professionals. But so it's this oddball thing. I'm just the one frickin' guy that got that gene, and here I am.
Now, I heard on another podcast that you haven't had that much music education, formal music education, handful of lessons, and of the small amount of lessons that you did get, what was sort of biggest takeaway from that? And was it sort of because for me, okay, let me see. I was classically taught by the ex-New Zealand Symphony Orchestra percussionist Norman Gadd. So I did a couple of years with that guy. Real taskmaster. No sitting down. It was all standing up at a snare drum. And then towards the end of my lessons, I actually got to sit down and play kit, right? So that was one thing. And then I had another teacher who's become a good friend of mine, Lance Phillip from New Zealand. He taught me one sort of type of thing. Once I came to Australia, I thought, I might just start to get some lessons again. And I went and saw this guy, and I only went to one lesson. He just showed me about the full body mechanics of it. Right, just it's sort of like it's all emotion. It's like you're a gearbox, and all the cogs and the gears are connected together, right? And it was only one lesson I had with this guy, and it was one of the biggest takeaways, takeaways from any lesson that I've ever had, that I probably think about the most, right? So from those small amount of lessons that you got, Tim, what was some big takeaways from that? Almost to a point where you said, "Oh, look, I don't need any more lessons because this is it."
Well, that's what it is, right? Is I think sometimes it's just these very simple concepts that stick with you through the entire duration of your playing career. So there's that lesson I mentioned earlier with the local metal drummer, which was teaching anything but metal stuff, grip and throw, the clave for independence. And that kind of set me on a good path. And then, I was growing up and learning drums just at the time when YouTube was starting to become a huge thing. So I was watching videos of these different drummers and trying to take from them. But I think things didn't really click until I was 22, 23. And so when I was 22, I played my last death metal gig. And I'm using these huge sticks. I'm playing a Mylar snare drum head. I'm not using triggers because I'm a tough guy, so I'm hitting really, really hard. And after that last set, every single joint of every single finger was just throbbing in pain for 3 days. It was pretty scary. And I said, guys, I gotta figure this out. So I studied with basically the best drum instructor in Wisconsin. He teaches at a bunch of the colleges, at the Music Conservatory in Milwaukee. Great guy, Dave Baltes. And Dave, again, helped me create a whole new approach to grip and throw. And it was those lessons that changed everything. And actually, before I left for France, I had a checkup with Dave just because I figured this is probably going to be the last time I'm going to be able to spend any time, in a room with this guy. And I said, Dave, I know at that point, it'd been 12, 13 years since he'd looked at my hands. And I said, just take another look at them, see if I'm doing any better than I did, a decade and a half ago. And it was so nice to hear, like, dude, you look so, your hands are way more loose. Everything's looking so much better. We went over some of the things like, alternatives to what I was doing, which was simply kind of the Todd Zuckerman approach to grip, which is this sort of timpani player type of thing where you change the fulcrum to the middle finger and the thumb and open the hands up a little more. I'd already been familiar with that. I was fortunate enough to share steaks and booze with Todd Zuckerman a few years ago, and we talked about that and sonar drums, which was a wonderful conversation, and hot dogs because he likes Chicago hot dogs. But just to hear this sort of technique from Dave again was like, okay, cool. So like, these are all things I know. He's seeing, this huge progress with my grip and throw, and I'm feeling it, or maybe not. I'm sure I feel it, but also I see it and I hear it in my playing because I document so much of this stuff with the videos I post. So really gave me the confidence to continue on. And it really all stemmed from a very, very small handful of lessons that I had just sitting down with the guy and talking about this simple concept of grip and throw. That, and as silly as it is, I think it's those small, important moments that really drove me to advocate for these sort of pedagogical elements. I did 6 years on the drum set committee for the Percussive Art Society, which is the big pedagogical kind of governing board for drummers around the world. And it's something I still advocate for today in my own work. So, to me, as a drummer, I don't necessarily feel like most drummers need a lot of lessons, but they need those few very important lessons if they're going to try to set themselves up for a lifetime of being able to use the body to play the drum set and without major pain. You know what I mean?
Mm. So who were the early drummers for you that you listened to? You're buying the record.
Gosh.
I'd say records, but you're a bit younger than
no.
So
you know what's
CDs,
funny
what's CDs?
We started on records too. Because it was we'd go to the library, and so when I was a kid, my mom would share her music. She liked a lot of blues. My dad would share his music. He liked a lot of that American classic rock stuff. And then for me, before I got into punk music, it was all like Bee Gees were one of my favorite bands growing up. I freaking love the Bee Gees. And then I got into punk music by 10, 11 years old. So it was listening to bands like Minor Threat and finding Fugazi through that. So Brendan Canty quickly became one of my favorite drummers. Super, super interesting guy. He went on to do music for like the Discovery Channel show soundtracks and stuff like this. So very wide, varied career. Someone else that I really like comes from a band called The Weaker Thans. His name is Jason Tate. I mean, from the beginning, he was a big influence too. The beautiful thing about Jason is, a lot of the music at that time, I was able to grow with the discographies of these musicians. So The Weaker Thans started out as sort of this punky, fast, quick thing, and really matured quickly as I dove into their discography as that continued to develop, and almost had like a epic-y alt country kind of sound by the time they were done being a band. So that kind of then got me back into the roots of some of these bands my dad showed me when I was a kid: Bruce Springsteen, Tom Petty. Mom listened to Bob Seger. So it was full circle. So those are a few of the huge influences on me as a kid. But yeah, punk, tons and tons of punk, tons and tons of hardcore, loud, brash, sometimes oversimplistic drumming. But again, I think it's where the main takeaway of that sort of thing was that it was to be a musician before being a drummer. And that was the thing that I think stuck with me as a kid. I think is the thing that sticks with me now. Is now on Instagram, it's a little different. I'm going to get a little more flashy and everything. But if I'm getting paid, or if I, to make music for someone, or if I'm trying to make music for myself, the music always comes before the drumming, if that makes sense.
Yeah. So what you just said there about the Instagram, it seems sort of out there and brash, but I've really studied your playing over this last week, and there's a lot of feel and really nice touch to your playing. It doesn't. I mean, for the non-drummer that tunes in and and sees the Crazy Tim and the bright shirts and the dinosaur and the horse head or whatever, they see that, and then they see all these drums and the Phil Collins like the blah 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 blah, and then the shouting and all that, right? you pull that back, you take the mask off that, and there's some really nice playing. So yeah,
there's a lot of sweat under that mask too, but no, that's very kind that you say that. It's very kind. I appreciate that. Thank you, Stevie.
No worries. Now you mentioned two bands when I asked you about some of those influences, right? And one of them was the Bee Gees, and the other one was Bob Seger, right? You find me two songs that feel better than the drums on More Than a Woman. Hollywood Nights, Bob Seger. Yeah,
dude,
that rhythm section in that song. Oh man, I got goosebumps. Look, and it's I've got this Apple Music playlist, right, and it's got maybe 50 of my all-time greatest feel-good songs. And if I'm in a sort of a shit mood or in a bit of a dark place, I put this playlist on, and it takes me through all the emotions, right? And that is one of the songs that brings me up. Hollywood Nights. That's a cracking song. And going back to More Than a Woman, you show me someone that does that better.
What a comfy pocket on that song. Well, you know what's so funny about Hollywood Nights? I can't remember for the life of me now, but within the last 6 months, I heard that song again, and I was like, who played drums on this? And I did look it up at one point, but I could not tell you who that was, because I don't think it was like a recognizable name. Now we're both going to Google it. Here we go.
Well, you keep talking, I'll Google.
All right, that sounds good. No, it's so funny because I think it's the same thing as what we see now with a lot of drummers, where there are so many incredible players around the world, but especially back then, you didn't have the internet for these folks to tell their story of who they were and what they played on. And it's something I was just at a recording studio on the north side of town yesterday, meeting with an engineer. And, we get to talking, and it turns out he's done sound design, basically writing the music for a lot of these like huge video games. He's worked on all these incredible records, but he doesn't have a website. He doesn't have an Instagram or YouTube page. It's hard to find his credits. And, it's like, man, like, I think the reason why I've been so fortunate to have incredible opportunities, especially the last 5 years with my music stuff, is I knew I had to tell that story. If this was the example I gave Christoph, this guy yesterday, is so a dear friend of mine is Kurt Biscara. Kurt's played drums for Tom Petty, Mick Jagger, Elton John. Yeah, you go down the line, any freaking legend, he's probably played for him. And because Kurt has credentials of that level, it helps him it's helped him to have maintained his career through, really almost through the entire duration of his, of a man's normal working years. It's much harder when you have someone like me, where it's like, yeah, I played for Disney and Fox for movies and TV, or Warner Records, tons of video games, but whether it's those accolades or the business accolades of being fortunate enough to work with Zildjian on some projects, being fortunate enough to design snare drums that now Abe Laboriel Jr. owns snare drums that I designed from the ground up. Blah, blah, blah. People don't know that. So if you don't, as a player like me, or maybe the player from Hollywood Nights, if you don't tell your story, no one is ever going to know who you are or what really cool things you've done. And to me, it's not a matter of, I'm not trying to be, you don't want to be, obviously you don't want to be narcissistic or a show off or anything like that. I don't think it's about that, but to me, it's telling the story is a matter of, It's come down to me keeping a career or building a career. It's the last week I had a fantastic meeting with the largest musical instruments wholesaler and online retailer that's based in France, and it was all because I've told my story, and they know my story because I put it online everywhere, and I have to sing, that song of my career, so to speak, and that's what you have to do. If you don't, then you can wind up just being another guy who fades off into obscurity. And it's not that there's anything wrong with that. I think there's something really beautiful in the ephemerality of just doing your thing and walking away. One of the stories I talk about a lot is the first drummer for REM. He played on that first big record that broke, and then he quit and he bought a farm and he never played, in a band again. He just did his thing.
I thought Bill Berry was it. I thought it was always him.
There was a guy before.
Right.
So,
right.
There's something really beautiful about that. I think as a millennial, I don't necessarily have that, what would you say, privilege to be able to, let it go, because work is a little different for millennials than other previous generations. So then maybe that plays into it too. But what did we find out about Mr. Hollywood Nights? Did we find anything?
Okay. Yes. Hollywood Nights by Bob Seger, featuring David Teagarden and Roger Hawkins. It was a double drum.
Oh, wow.
I did not know that. And then now that I'm playing it in my head, I can hear it. Can hear the double drums. It's almost you can kind of hear the flams, right? And I thought that was just, who does that? What's his name? The Michael Jackson drummer.
JR. I have his signature.
No, not JR.
Oh, the live drummer. The live drummer.
Jonathan Moffat. Right.
John Moffat.
So when he plays that sort of two-handed 16th note thing with a flam on the snare drum. I in my head, before I knew it was double drumming, that's kind of what I thought he was playing on that Hollywood Nights. But no, it's two drummers.
So cool.
And the drummer on More Than a Woman is Dennis Bryan. And I remember reading a short article, in Mod Drummer, sometimes there'll be a section where it's like 30 lines or something about like you were saying about a drummer that's sort of fallen away into obscurity. Yeah, there was just a short article on that guy. And
that's cool.
Yeah, what a cat, man. What a cat. So, as I mentioned a little bit earlier, you're pretty known now for your Instagram and your extravagance, I can say, for lack of a better word. But I mean, it works, right? So, and if you haven't seen Tim's Instagram, there's a link for it in the show notes. So go check it out. What brought you to there? What brought you to the really out there videos? You sort of came into Instagram right on the ground floor. Short videos, like 15-second videos. And how did you get to where you are with your Instagram extravagance? I guess that's the question.
The craziness, I think, was always there from about the beginning. Especially once video became a thing, then I could post something silly, a little easier than with a photo. So it built. The costumes didn't really come into play, I think, until like 2021. I think I did a little bit of that previously, and then it really took off. And for me specifically, I think the reason why it continued to be a bigger and bigger element, there's a few reasons why it became a bigger and bigger element of what I do, is one, especially going into 2020, there was so much, such an additional heaviness to the world that, I think we all really needed a laugh, a little bit of a reprieve. And so it was that kind of content that I really saw the importance of it, and I wanted to give that to people. Then the other part of it was like finding that in between area where it was a little less wacky, but it was still certainly entertaining. Was like doing the Phil's video on the giant fiberglass drum set, playing Phil Collins' famous drum fill on that, and then doing all the silly blast beat videos, like taking a Shania Twain song and a country song and playing death metal drums over it. And as silly as it is, A, again, anyone can enjoy that content, but B, especially with the blast beat content, some of those posts just took off. That Shania Twain video, I think, had 500,000 views, 750,000 views, somewhere in that range. So it really helps to continue to build this little platform that I've got online. So it serves a lot of purposes.
My favorite is the every modulating drummer. That's so good. That's so classic. Was that how you label it? Every modulating drummer. So the people that don't understand that, there's a lot of videos out there of drummers that'll take a song. Like we all know a song that starts on a 1 and we can sort of bop along to it. But these modulating drummer videos, the drummer will start on 3 and then for the next bar he's on 7 and he's just twisted it. And then, those real sort of math rock guys and jazz cats, they can just hear it, right? But for the layman listening to that, they don't get it, right? So I think what you've done there is you've sort of brought it all together, and that's just exactly how it sounds. But I get a lot of joy out of your content, and like I said earlier, it was the other way around for me. It was about the drumless tracks first, and then this stuff. So
you went from the very normal content into the full chaos. I don't know whether I should say thank you for sticking around or I'm really sorry for your experience. I'm not sure what to say to you about that.
Yeah, because I think Glenn gave me he told me your name, your full name, and then go to Bandcamp. And then so I went to Bandcamp, and I think somehow it's linked back to your Instagram or something like that. Something like that. So then I open up the Instagram and go, what the fuck is this? Have I gone to the wrong spot? But I stayed there, of course, because it was very, very entertaining. But okay. Now I mentioned the drumless tracks again, and I have mentioned earlier how I sort of got how much sort of value I get out of that. I think it's a fantastic resource for many, many, many people. How did that come about? How did you get it to where it is now, and sort of what's the future for it? I remember I saw a post that you wrote. I think it might have been after this Volume 11 came out, and maybe that was during your move from the US to France, that this might be the last one for a little while.
Yeah. So basically, it all started with me making like 10 loops for all by hand. Basically, it was like, I'm going to play the guitar. I'm going to figure, everything. Guitar, here's the riff for the guitar from a guitar. Here's the riff from a bass from me playing bass. Here's the riff from a keyboard, me playing the keyboard, whatever else. Basically, I did it all. Really, really time consuming. And I made it just for me. And then people were like, oh, this is really cool. Like, we really like this. I was like, all right, I'll put it on Bandcamp. And so the first volume, that's why the first volume, I think, is less than 10 tracks. So, then eventually I switched to sample-based stuff, and I was able to crank out, like 100 tracks in the same amount of time it took me to do 10. So to me, it was like, and the thing I do about this whole thing is it's all free. If you don't want to pay anything for it, either A, you can stream it, or B, you can download these tracks all for free. And I wanted it to be a way for me to get back to the community. And then people who do pay, which I really appreciate, that to me, either A, it's a way for them to say thank you for the product, or B, I kind of look at it like a I guess you could say a tip jar for all the stupid little online videos I make. If you like those videos, here's a way you can kind of support what I'm doing online.
Right.
And so now it's at a point now where I've got over 10 volumes, over 1,000 tracks, and those tracks have been streamed over 1 million times on Bandcamp.
Yeah, wow, awesome.
It's crazy. So, I don't know what the future looks like. I think I'm at a place where I'm ready to kind of let that be the collection. 1,000 songs is pretty good. I think people can chew on that for a long while. But I never say never. I think I kind of want to at least give it some time before I put out another one, if ever. So we'll see. I think it was a great project. It's going on over 5 years now. It's had tons of success, and I'm really appreciative for everyone who supported it, everyone who has used it. And I mean, it's not like it's not like it's a dead project or something. I literally, after having kind of a dry spell of maybe 10 or 15 posts in a month from other people making these videos with my tracks, I had one day, I think it was within the last week here, where there were 5 new posts in one day of all these different people, half of which who I don't think have ever posted videos before, making videos with my drumless tracks. So
right.
It's cool. That thing is alive, and it has a life of its own. Those drumless tracks have a life of their own. I really love that about that.
Yeah. So one thing to consider. So you're at volume 11. Now, to me, 11's not quite done, right? Keep that in mind. I like
it because I could say I have over 10. Over 10.
Yeah, but you're not quite at a dozen. See, it's a little shy. So
okay,
so I'm going to leave the door open for you, right? No. I like I mentioned, I get hours and hours and hours of good times, man. Because I play these days to feel good, right? I do it for I don't gig anymore. Yeah, and like I mentioned, I've got my new drums here, and I just shut the door and I just play and play and play. And I 98% of the stuff that I play, if I'm not just doing a jam or a solo or something, is your tracks. And I'll just pick a volume and I'll just start at 1. There's 100 tracks in volume 10, I think it is. So each of those tracks goes for between 10 and 15 minutes. So for me, it's, I start at 1. I was just talking to the guy I interviewed a couple of weeks back about this. You push play, you start at one point, you start with the 1 might be here in the loop. By the time that 10, 12, 15 minutes is up, you're somewhere else, man. You're miles off. You've half the time, you've doubled the time, you've gone into blast beats, whatever. It's just, and the other benefit for me, or for any drummer really, is it's not to a click. So you are developing your own internal metronome, your internal clock. That's what I like about it. What I find, and before we talked today, I went back and found a couple of those videos that Glenn had posted with your tracks, and listened to how he was playing them to how I play them, and his 1 somewhere else. His 1 starts somewhere else on the tracks that, there's a couple of favourites of mine, especially in volume 10, and then he's played that same song, but his 1 is somewhere else. I'm like, that's not 1, man. That's not my 1. It's. I just think they're magic, and I can't rave enough about them, and so my drummer friends out there, the links in the show notes there, go and check them out.
Thank you so much.
As Tim said, they're free, but I find the value in it. So I'm one of those people who have paid for them, because I get that's the value I get out of those. So well done, congratulations, and thank you.
Appreciate you, dude. Thank you so much.
No worries, man. No worries. Right at the start, I mentioned you're in Wisconsin and now you're in France. So let's talk about how you got to France and a little bit about what the scene is like there, and what you're trying to do to set yourself up there, and what you sort of left in regards to sort of studio space and that kind of thing to what you're sort of dealing with now space wise? Because me and my family, we're going to France in October, and so we've been looking at sort of places to stay, and it just seems like everywhere's really small unless you've got heaps of money, right? So
that's what it is. No, that's 100% what it is. So we moved here in November. Took us about a year and a half, 2 years to make that happen. Before that, working with lawyers, getting all our stuff packed up, selling stuff, tossing stuff, donating stuff, and I left a really great home studio in my mom's basement, the place I've been playing music in since I was a kid. And, I really knew that space. I knew how the air moved. I knew how to get a great tone out of there. All the stuff I recorded for whether it was Disney, Warner Records, or anybody in between, it was done in that basement. So now the situation is, as far as space is concerned, is we're in a one bed in an apartment building. So there are no drums happening here, which, it's not, I don't like that, but it is what it is. I'm not feeling too bad about it because, I have built up a content library to keep posting new videos through the end of the year, along with some old ones. And, also I'm really fortunate to have leveraged my Instagram to start making some friendships here. So like the craziest thing is landing here. Well, there's a lot of crazy things about coming to France, but one of the crazy things is that the 3 drummers I started to connect with off the bat in France, all 3 of them were in the process of building their own shed studios out in their backyards when I got here. So right now I'm helping one guy who's in the process of getting his recording rig together for that shed. We're going to build that whole rig out and get his, a mixing template together so he can easily make videos. There's a second guy whose shed was finished within the first month of me getting here, and we got his recording stuff all hammered out, and, we're still tweaking things, adding to the rig and that sort of thing. And the third guy is still wrenching on the space right now. I think knowing that, networking with some of these guys who already have recording studios, my goal for now is we have to have, so my stuff's all in London at a friend's drum shop. We have to have our stuff in France within 1 year of landing here. So like October is when we're really
otherwise what? Otherwise, what happens?
Oh, then you got to pay tens of thousands of dollars on duties of anything that comes through, even if it's your possessions. So, yeah. So I need to get it here by then. My goal is to secure a relationship with like a studio owner or something like that that feels good enough that I can leave all my drums there, leave all my mics, my mic stands, my interfaces, everything. And then, maybe the exchange is something like, well, if I can record here or whatever, 1 or 2 nights a week, then you can use this for any session you got. Whatever I got is, what you got. And yesterday, this is the guy I went and met with who had a studio yesterday. He's a friend of one of the first friends I met here. And he's very trusted by this guy. And so, I'm feeling good that might be a thing that could develop in the future. But, again, everything comes from Instagram here. So I don't think I've told these stories yet. But there's all of the, I don't want to say all, but what it feels like is almost all of the good things that have come to me and my wife here in France have come through the drum community. So, as one example, I have a friend in the London area. His name's Freddie Sheed. He's a session guy. He does all sorts of work. Last year, Freddie worked a lot in Paris, and during the days he was recording the music for the pre-recorded music for the Olympics. At night, he was working on one of France's biggest ever musical. And so literally working all day and all night, Freddie had a really incredible opportunity to start building a network in France. And so I told him very early on that we were moving. He said, I'm going to do whatever I can to try to hook you up with some guys. So Freddie calls a guy in Paris, who calls a guy in Nantes. I go out to dinner with that guy, me and my wife do. So then that guy feels comfortable enough to call another guy who happens to be the VP of one of the VPs of this giant wholesaler and online retailer for musical instruments in France, the biggest French-based one. And he so happened to have stumbled upon my LinkedIn profile back in I think October, he was saying, when it still said I was living in Wisconsin, and he was saying he was looking for a percussion product manager, and he was thinking, oh man, if this guy was in Nantes, France, he'd be perfect for this job. Little did he know I was moving there in a freaking month. So unfortunately, that didn't work out. But, because there was this incredible serendipitous thing going on, he was very kind and connected me with the two big VPs on they call them directors here in France, but in the U.S. we call them VPs. VPs on the retail side. The guy who generally manages the whole retail thing, and then the top dog in marketing. So their HR team had me come in last week and talk with them. We had a real productive meeting, and hopefully there's a potential to do some work together there. None of that would have happened. Even these conversations would never have happened had I not had an Instagram and had that friendship with Freddie. And it all started with Instagram for me and Freddie. So incredible that me in Wisconsin had a friend in London who helped me get to a connection all the way in this, it's a second city. It's not, this is not Paris. This is not Lyon. It's a second city of this country. And still I was able to connect with people directly right here because of my little network. And because I tell my stories, that one VP somehow on LinkedIn landed on my LinkedIn page because I'm good at telling my story, whether it's about the professional stuff or the music stuff or whatever. So right there tells you the importance of, being able to tell your story. The other story I'd like to mention real quick is just this, again, the serendipity in some of this stuff is what continues to drive me, because this is a real tough experience. I'm sure it was real tough for you coming from New Zealand to Australia. I'm sure there's cultural things going from small town to giant city. That's a huge change. There's a lot. But imagine going from New Zealand to Sydney, and then everybody's speaking a completely different language. That's kind of what I feel like I'm facing a little bit here. So did you have any?
Sorry to cut you off there, but so I was thinking about this today. Obviously, you knew you were going to France. Did you did you have time to try and learn the language a little bit?
I was really fortunate.
Sorry, your wife's French, isn't she?
Yes, thank God.
Right. Okay.
So that helps for sure. She's completely fluent, which makes things so much easier. But for whatever reason, when I was 10 years old going into American middle school, we had the choice between Spanish and French. And I said, I'm going to take French. And I took French every year through the end of high school. So for 7 years, I was learning French. I dropped that, obviously after I turned 18, went to college, never really used it until I was 30 again, got together with my wife, and then we spoke French with her family. I'm just trying to work on Duolingo from the beginning of the relationship to try to help get up to speed again with that. And so between all that history, all these tools, learning tools I'm trying to take advantage of now, and simply by living here and having that base in the language, I think if you came here with nothing, it'd be really difficult to grow. But having the basis I have, it's way easier because I have all this understanding of the grammar and that sort of thing. So I can expand my vocabulary a lot easier than someone who's coming from square one. So that I'm really, really fortunate for. But I'm still using English a lot. So like this other story, the first week we were here, I found a networking events for professionals who spoke English in Nantes, France. So I go to this event. One of the first people I talked to, she's this gal from Mauritius. And, we're chatting. She says what she does. I say, I do marketing, copywriting, and I'm a drummer. And she says, oh my gosh, my husband's a drummer. So I give her a link to my Instagram. She goes home. I immediately get a text from her that night. She's like, oh my God, my husband said he's watched all your YouTube videos. And I'm thinking, this is crazy. This guy's halfway around the world and he's watching my English language YouTube videos on nerdy drum stuff. Crazy. So I connect with that guy. We've hung out a few times, had dinner with him and his wife, and he's a doctor. And my wife has some bad migraines, and we tried all these different medicines, and finally she found this one particular type of medicine that really helps nip that thing in the bud. So the tough thing about that is it's it's hard to get a prescription for this thing because it's you have to go through, in the U.S. we had to go through all these drugs first before we got to the good one. And so we went to our general doctor here. That guy gave us a recommendation for a neurologist. Call that person, explain the situation, but they can't get us until November. So I'm talking to this doctor drummer guy who I meet. Wonderful. He's a blessing to have in our lives. We're really appreciative for him because he's been so kind and helpful. He asked, okay, what's the situation? What's the drug you're using? Blah, blah, blah. Turns out he is friends with a doctor who lives within an hour of here, who is one of the only few people that regularly prescribes that particular type of migraine drug that my wife uses. And she's going to see my wife in 2 weeks. 2 weeks. So it makes me a little emotional, but it's just to say, it's like you don't know where this drum thing's going to take you, and whether you're doing drum things or life things, drummers pull through for one another, or at least it's in my life, it's created a conduit with which I can create these relationships and with other great, great people. And I'm really appreciative for that, having done all this stuff with my drumming over, especially the last 10 years with the online stuff. Because without that, I don't think we'd have a shot at making this work today. So crazy.
Magic, man. So I'm going to leave all the links, like I mentioned, to the stuff we've already talked about, and your YouTube, your Instagram, and all that sort of stuff. And like I said, the drumless tracks, I'll put a link there for that. Man, Tim, I'm so happy that we've sort of hooked up, we've linked up now. The way that sort of happened too is like you contacted me, and I think you read that my podcast was just for Australians and New Zealanders. Well, it's not. It's actually, if you read it, it actually says Australia, New Zealand, and beyond. Right.
Okay.
So that was your in, mate. So that was your in. It said beyond, and you're beyond. So here we are. But yeah.
No, I appreciate the time, just the opportunity to talk with you, and it's like I said, one of my favorite things about being a drummer is the community. Gives me the opportunity to be there for people. People wind up being there for me. It's just creating these relationships, these friendships, and doing your best to put some good out into the world. And I appreciate the opportunity to talk about these experiences with you, and to talk a little bit about my love for the Australians out there, the Kiwis out there. I got a whole list of freaking bands and drummers here that we didn't even get to talk about today. So, no,
we'll do that in part two when we do part two,
baby. I would love it. No, so it's just thank you so much, and hopefully when you're here in France, if we're able to link up, dude, I'll bring you a whole case of wine and cheese, and we'll be living life.
So I think we're in Paris for maybe 6 or 7 days, right? And one of those days we were thinking of going to Disneyland, but the kids don't want to do that now, right? So we might have this one free day. So I was looking at the map today going, wonder if I could pop down to Nantes Yeah, how was that with the nasal?
That's good. That's good.
No, yeah.
And honestly, it's a great day trip. I'm not on the tourism board yet, but I'm waiting for a call from the non-tourism board. But it's like a 2-hour trip down on the train. It's a beautiful ride, and what I love about Nantes is it feels more like France. Paris, you get some, a lot of the international city things that feel more French than if you go to London or LA. But
Right.
man, Nantes feels French. Culturally, it's less, you don't have to feel so anxious here as you might in some of the touristy areas in the bigger cities. And listen, whatever happens, we'll have to keep in touch, and we'll figure something out. I got a feeling we will.
We'll work it out, brother. All right, thanks, Tim, man. Look after yourself, bro, and we'll talk
you
soon.
too.
All right,
thank
cheers,
you.
bud. See you. Yo, it's Stevie here. I hope you enjoyed that episode. If you dig the Gig Life podcast, please subscribe, share, leave a review. Please follow us on Instagram and TikTok. You can send me a message if you have an idea for a guest or if you just want to say hello. This podcast is free, costs you nothing, but if you find the value in the Gig Life podcast, you can leave a tip or a donation. Links are in the show notes on your app. That's it for me for now. Catch you next time, guys. Cheers.